Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation is in studio for some homemade over-unders about the Philadelphia Eagles 2024 season, coming up next on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Monday afternoon. High noon, Bo Wulf and Brandon Lee Gowton in studio, taking the place of Zach Berman. BLG, nice to see you. How you doing? Once upon a time, a prodigious Eagles podcaster in your own right.
That's right. Once upon a time, honored to be here with you, Bo. Honored to be, filling the shoes of Zach. I would say huge shoes to fill.
Yes.
Obviously, there's the height joke in there. For people who don't know, I'm 6'9".
Flex.
Really shoehorn that in right from the jump. But big honor to be here with you as well. Not to make you feel old, but I used to watch you and C-Mac and Dave Spadero back on Eagles Live when I was in high school. So cool to be here.
Well, thank you very much. And as I just learned, back when you were probably using a pseudonym.
Probably.
We got the whole backstory of I've been wondering, and I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. The Lee in Brandon Lee Gowton, is it part of a two-part first name? Is it the middle name? Is it a Lee Gowton at the end? And you gave me the story.
Yeah. So shout out to my dad, who big Bruce Lee fan.
Okay.
And that's why I was named after Bruce Lee's son, who tragically passed away filming The Crow. But I am named after Bruce Lee's son. Originally was writing under first and middle name because I wasn't ready to put the last name out there.
Just in case, yeah.
Don't want to get doxxed.
Yeah.
Never be too careful. But then kind of became a full-time thing, so had to commit.
Here you are. And we got an exciting episode. So just like you are stepping in for Zach today, I am sort of stepping in for Jimmy Kempski.
That's right.
In the iteration of a long-running game between the two of you in which you guys make up homemade over-unders. And you and I are going to take part in that.
I'm excited for it. And
people just, you got to play the hits that people want to know. Just so I know, is it Paul George or is it George Paul?
I think it's Paul George.
Okay.
Yeah.
You feel good about that?
I kind of feel like most people do, in that it's probably the best thing they could have done given the circumstances that aren't ideal. But I hate to admit it. I hate to be Negadelphian off the top, but the Celtics winning kind of just was like, I just don't know what the point is anymore.
Yeah. That's hard to disagree with, but it is. It's the best they could have done, right? And they still got a little bit of space left to fill out the roster. We'll see. The guys on the PHLY Sixers podcast have been doing an awesome job all weekend and a great job on the emergency podcast this morning that I was listening to. Check that out as we see Zach Berman in the chat live. The man just cannot step away.
I tried to pull down the seat a little bit or adjust it, but I couldn't figure it out. So I feel good. I feel like we're at a reasonable level here.
It's like, Zach, come back to the beach. No, I got to watch these over-unders. Do you want to go first or should I?
I think you should start it off. The guest starts. And I should mention, too, these polls are going to be on bleedinggreennation.com, once this episode is posted and whatnot. So people listeners, the readers of EGN, listeners of PHLY Eagles podcast can also participate and get in on the competition as a collective. But, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, bleedinggreennation.com. I presume that you already know that if you're watching this episode. But, yes, check it out. All right, I'm going to start with the quarterback. And here's my one for Jalen Hurts for you,
okay.
BLG. Over under a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio for Jalen Hurts in 2024. Now, just for context, he has only done better than this once in his 3 years as a starter. That was obviously in 2022. Last year, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. 2022, 22 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. And then the year before that, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. How do you think that Jalen Hurts, basically, is he going to have a good year?
Yeah. So because I'm dumb, in this circumstance at least.
What's bet? What constitutes over or under?
Yeah.
I think over would be he has a good year, basically. Like the ratio is more like 3-1,
right,
as opposed to 2-1.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the over on that, and I think it comes down to ultimately big picture. I think I'm kind of in the middle on Jalen Hurts, which isn't a fun place to be for the sake of entertainment. You know, you can't sit the fence.
Yeah, take wise, yeah.
But from a standpoint of, I think there are things from last year where people are too harsh on him, and I'm like, I think that you're not being gracious enough. And I think there are some things where actually he was great, and you can't even complain about him at all. And I think that's a little too favorable. So I think ultimately, I expect the interceptions to come down. It felt like a little uncharacteristic last year. It felt like there was some bad luck baked in there, kind of like Dak had the year before, where last year it was such a no-brainer his interceptions were going to come down.
And it also felt like he got a little bit lucky in 2022, where there were some that he probably should have thrown. And so there was an expectation that he, even in 2023, like he's going to throw more interceptions. It does feel like this should be closer to the middle this time around. And by the way, we're each going to pick both of these.
Right.
And because we need to make it just a little bit more complicated, the two of us each get one best bet, which is going to count as 2 points when we look back on this. And you can only do your best bet on someone else's proposal.
Right.
So you're not going to do it just yet, but just keep that in mind. So you're going to go over. You're going to say he's going to do better than that touchdown interception ratio.
Yes.
I will also go over, but I do think it will be. I do think it will be close.
It's hard to bet against. I mean, not that he's perfect, but like I feel like typically the people betting against Jalen Hurts, like that's not always.
You don't
the
want to be on that side, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what I lean towards. There are questions. Again, I don't feel amazing about it, but I lean that way.
Okay. Over to you.
I'm going to go with the backup quarterback to start out. And, you know, one of these guys is your guy. And I feel like you made a mistake here. I'm sorry to call you out on your own show. I feel like you should have rode harder for Tanner McKee, to your credit, though, because I feel like you were really early on him in training camp last year.
I know. It is a regret.
It's not your
I should have trusted my eyes.
It's not your type.
That's the problem. It's the same thing that happened with Reed Blankenship. It's, you know what? The eyes are able to overcome my implicit biases.
You know, just like but if you stuck with it, I think it would have been a great call. I'm going to go with more pass attempts for the Eagles this season. So, you know, we're doing over-under, but some of these I think are like an either or. You know. Kenny Pickett or Tanner McKee, who has more pass attempts for the Eagles this season?
Now, I did have on here Tanner McKee over-under 0.5 pass attempts, so I'll take that off the board. I do think that the answer is Pickett. I would like to ride hard for Tanner, and you know, we Zach and I were batting around the ideas of like who could they still trade potentially if you were going to trade from strength and not trading for something. Like if somebody suffers a quarterback injury elsewhere, they could flip Pickett potentially. But I just think that part of the reason for trading Pickett is not just because they think he's a better option now, but because they see the upside of flipping it, and that's not going to happen if Pickett's if McKee is the number 2, right? They're trying to rehabilitate his value. So I would lean Pickett, but you know, I think it should be McKee. But I would for this game, I'll take Pickett.
So we're gonna go chalk here early because I agree with you. I do think I wanted to, you know, part of the reason of doing this is bringing up topics.
Of course,
to touch on. I feel like I would like to see Tanner McKee. I feel like the Eagles owe giving him a fair chance to win the number 2. They don't owe him. It's not that they needed to make him the number 2 automatically, but I think they owe him a shot at it. And I don't think he's going to get that, unfortunately, because I think Kenny Pickett's going to be exclusively the quarterback 2 in training camp. And McKee will get a chance to show something in the preseason, I'm sure. But ultimately, I think he's in a tough spot. I would like to see McKee get a fair chance to win the job. I thought Pickett looked probably better than you did in spring practices. Not he looked amazing, but I thought he looked solid and better than I expected. To be fair, my expectations are really low. So it should be a fun quarterback battle. Unfortunately, I don't think it will be.
Do you think, you know, like the messaging from the NovaCare complex after they traded for Kenny Pickett was like, this doesn't say anything about how we feel about Tanner McKee. We're still very high on Tanner McKee. This is just an opportunity to get a starting caliber quarterback as the backup. Do you believe that? Does that pass the sniff test for you?
I think it's just the experience thing for them. I think they're really keen on having someone who's actually played before. I think it's too much of a projection for them for McKee. So I don't think they're sour on McKee. I just think it's like, hey, we only saw him in preseason. He's never played in a real game. We don't fully trust that because it's never happened. And I think there's the allure of, you know, Kenny Pickett, former first-round pick, that's in there as well. So I think it's more ultimately about just wanting that experience.
I just think that like the entire idea of drafting Tanner McKee in the 5th round is that if he hits, you have a cheap backup quarterback, right? Because otherwise they're going to spend on that position. And if you're paying Jalen Hurts, this is a place that you can save a little bit of money. And if they're now paying Kenny Pickett, which they're not paying him a ton of money, they're still saving, and that's part of the reason you give up the draft capital. But if Pickett's here for both of the next 2 years, then you're only getting McKee for 1 year, and then you're going to have to pay him even if you like him. So I don't know. I think it's impossible to say that their evaluation of Tanner McKee isn't a factor in some way. Like if they loved him, then they wouldn't have made that trade. But
I guess
it doesn't mean that they don't like him.
Right.
Okay. Can I give you one more Jalen Hurts one?
Yeah. Let's do it.
This is something of a tush-push-ish question. Okay. 49.5 rushing first downs for Jalen Hurts in 2024. I'll give you the context here. Last 3 seasons. Last year, he was 2nd in the entire NFL with 68. The year before that, he was 3rd in the NFL with 67. And in 2021, he had 56. So I'm dropping it down a little bit here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm baking in some injury possibility. And are they going to lean as heavily on him in short yardage situations now that they have Saquon Barkley and a different center?
It's a great question. Did you take the over?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay. Because
I probably should have written mine beforehand. Yeah.
I worry about being so chalk, but I think I'm going to have to go over. I think Hurts, wasn't. We all know, like he wasn't quite there with the legs last year. Like I think, less than he might ever be, relatively speaking, at least early on in his career. So I would expect him to be more involved with that. And until I see the tush push like not be the thing with him, I'm just going to assume it is the thing with him, and they're going to keep doing that until I see otherwise. So, and because of the numbers you said as well, it's hard to bet against it for me. I mean, obviously you have to consider the injury and whatnot too. But I'm going to say over on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep picking the same one. I do want to take the. Oh, you know what? I'll go under on this one.
Okay.
Just because there are some paths I don't want to root for him to get injured, but I think it's possible that. The problem is that like I think he's going to run more in scramble situations than he did last year. But I do think the tush push. I don't think they're getting rid of it, but I think they may not spam it quite as much as they have.
Do you think they might do that in part as like to appease the complaint? That would be a silly reason to do it, but I feel like there is some like we kind of have to tone it down maybe a little bit.
Maybe, yeah, I think that's possible. I mean, we know that they're rabbit-eared to some degree. By the way, before you give you the next one, we have a super chat from DFOP himself.
Oh, my gosh.
RB, Rich Bobby, who says, shout out to BLG and Jimmy Kemsky. Looking forward to whatever you both do next podcast-wise. Love
Me too. Which, who knows?
This is the next thing, but I look forward to the next thing after that.
Right.
Yeah. All right, over to you.
Okay, let's do one of the Eagles, maybe arguably their most prolific offseason acquisition. Big name value-wise. I'm going to do Saquon Barkley. I'm going to do scrimmage yards at 1,263.5, which that is basically, so 1,263 is what DeAndre Swift had last year. So do you think
good number.
Saquon Barkley is going to have more or fewer in this case, or less?
Fewer.
You're the
expert.
expert.
You got it.
Fewer than DeAndre Swift did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're going to continue to go chalk here, but if he stays healthy, it's hard not to think that would not hit the over. I think they're going to be more willing to give him the ball than they were with DeAndre Swift. I think that's the entire reason for spending on him. So I'm going to take the over, but I don't feel great about it.
I'm going to be the villain here.
All right.
I'm going to go the under.
Good for you. Somebody's got to be the heel.
The Saquon thing has been tough for me to reconcile as someone who also used to podcast about the NFC East as a whole, the NFC East mixtape for longtime listeners and or for newer listeners, really, I guess who wouldn't recognize it. But every year we do like an underrated, overrated players in the division.
Okay.
Me and my co-host RJ Ochoa, and like Saquon was often my most overrated player.
Sure.
So it's not that he's bad. Overrated doesn't mean bad. I just think because of fantasy football, I think because of the prestige of the number 2 pick, because he's a localish person from Penn State. There's just so much, I think, baked into like the idea of Saquon versus the reality of Saquon, who I think will be fine this year, but I don't have like these lofty expectations. And coming up with this one, I was kind of wondering like, what is a successful season, for Saquon Barkley? How do the Eagles kind of like what does that look like? How does that feel? I'm going to go under on this just because injury is baked in. I think that he could have a very similar year to what DeAndre Swift had last year.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree that the idea that like Saquon Barkley in reputation, like it's outsized versus his production. I mean, he's had 2 really good seasons, right? And 1 special season.
And like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Right.
6 years ago.
It is absolutely true that he has been in one of the worst situations for a running back in the entire league, with a bad quarterback and a terrible offensive line and nobody else to take the attention away from opposing defenses. And now he's going to be in an absolutely ideal situation. Like that is going to change things. And I think that he does still have big playability.
Sure.
And I think that is what, is this a success? It probably comes down to, are there 5 plays over the course of the season where DeAndre Swift wouldn't have turned this into, a 30-yard gain and might have got tackled in the backfield, and he's able to do that? And in the fourth quarter, are they able to lean on him and grind out those, 4-minute offense type drives that they had in 2017, right? Where they can give him the ball and they can have a 13-play drive that ices the clock. If they can lean on him as to do the things that a star running back is supposed to be able to do, then I think it will be successful. But I also think, if I'm betting on, is Saquon Barkley going to be worth the contract that he signed, then I'm probably definitely going to say no.
Right. Yeah, it's a high bar there, especially he's top 5 kind of running back money. And, this is such like a small sample thing that might not matter at all. But just like even seeing him during the spring, like I didn't see, oh my gosh, like that's Saquon. Like that's the difference in terms of like a highlight play. Again, it's not the end of the world, but I just feel like that's a setting in theory where he might, pop at least one time. He did look like way different than any Eagles running back I think I've honestly ever seen. His physique, like that stood out in a big way. But besides that, I kind of forgot he was there sometimes.
I agree with that. And I have a snapshot in my mind of he's running a wheel route.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it was Devin White was running with him. And he's not running.
I think it was. Well, there was 2. There's one with
Zach Bond, right?
Yeah.
He's not like running away from him. Now he's got a step, and also you would think, okay, if this is part of the offense, Jalen Hurts should throw this ball. Like, let's see what it looks like. And he didn't throw the ball, and Jalen Hurts hasn't historically thrown the ball to running backs, and so like the theory of him, and I talked about this with Fran on Friday, of like, is he really going to change what the passing game looks like from a running back perspective? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think he's here to be what he can be as a running back and less so as a receiver.
Yeah, that's where I'm also kind of a little bit skeptical in that number. I don't think it's basically how do you feel about the rushing yards from that projection more than like, do you think he's really going to go off as a receiver?
All right, I have another running back one for you in that case. Will Shipley, Zach Berman's guy. And I think Zach and I are going to get a little more into Will Shipley on tomorrow's episode.
Okay.
But Will Shipley, over under 12.5 catches. Now, Zach is making the case that Will Shipley is going to be the number 2 running back. Here, I will give you the catches for the running backs over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Last year, DeAndre Swift, 39, Kenny Gainwell, 30, Boston Scott, 4. 2022, Kenny Gainwell, 23, Miles Sanders, 20, Boston Scott, 5. And the year before, Kenny Gainwell, 33, Miles Sanders, 26, Boston Scott, 13.
Man, I'm not like the biggest Will Shipley believer, but he might have had like 12 catches in that practice that one day. That seemed, and that's also not to harp on Saquon, but part of why, like, if Will Shipley is like doing some things in the passing game in practice, like why couldn't I see like Saquon do that one time? I think they're so thin at running back. I feel like there's just, and I worry about the Saquon health a little bit, where I feel like there's an opportunity. And I don't think Gainwell is so great that, Shipley can't kind of factor in there at some point. So it feels a little like I might regret this looking back when I tally up the results after the season. But I'll go over. I think they might have some kind of role for him.
Okay. I kind of would lean towards the over, but I think I cannot look myself in the mirror and host this show and look at you people.
Just for the bit.
I got to take the under. What else are we doing here? Yeah. All right, I'll let you do one more, and then I'll give us an ad read.
So, knock on wood, not trying to jinx anything here, but A.J. Brown plus Devontae Smith regular season games played combined.
Ooh.
So the sum of those two numbers, max being 34 for this 17 game season. I'm setting it at 30.5. And AJ hasn't missed a regular season game in Philly since the Eagles traded for him. Devontae Smith missed one last year. Probably maybe could have played if, the Eagles had something to play for, maybe not. But, obviously have been extremely healthy, are young, in their prime, in theory should be available. But it just kind of feels like, can they keep getting this fortunate? Especially with the wide receiver depth being like kind of thinner than ever. It just feels like you're tempting fate a little bit.
I agree with that. I also have a combined one, which we will get to in a little bit. But, I mean, it's no fun to bet against health. So I'm going to take the over, but I don't feel great about it. And I think you're right. Like, A.J. Brown, before he came to Philadelphia, had a reputation as like a guy who got banged up often and missed a lot of time. And that was the case. And, Devontae entering the draft, that was a knock on him. I'm less worried about him than A.J. Brown for sure. Also, not for nothing, incentive-wise, both of these guys just got paid. Right, so it's not like they have to chase a number to up their market value. Like, they're locked into long-term contracts. If it's on the fence, they don't need to push it. So, like, objectively, I think I would take the under. I don't want to be that guy, so I'll take the over. But I think you've done a good job, and this is a nice opportunity for arbitrage for you, because I think as the heel, you can be comfortable in taking the under.
So it's basically like one IR stint, which is why I picked 30.5.
Yeah.
If they go in IR, then it's the under. So I'm going to take the over. I'm not going to go heel on this one, just because I believe in those guys a lot. But I do think like it has to be acknowledged. The Eagles have been very fortunate with those two in these cases, and I still think even with the receiver depth there being kind of a little suspect. I mean, having one of those two guys is obviously incredible. So many teams would kill to just have one. So should be acknowledged.
I'll give you my other one. We'll stay on it. So A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, last year, the two of them combined for 62% of the Eagles' receiving yards. Just the two of them. The year before, it was 61.7%. All the Eagles' receiving yards, the two of those guys, that's what they did. This year, I'm putting it at 60.9. So I'm dropping it down a little bit. Close to a 69, yeah. But so we're baking in the injury possibility here. But as you talked about, they seem shallower here than ever. Are the Eagles just going to funnel all their passes even more so to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith?
Well, if I'm going with the over here in terms of the games played, I'm going to say that, they're both healthy. They stay healthy, and they do indeed continue to dominate the target share here. Dallas Goedert, so weird. Such a weird season last year. Like, I don't think he's a bad player, but the results weren't really there. And again, I don't think either of us are fully buying the Saquon being this major factor in the passing game yet. So until proven otherwise, I'm just going to continue to lean in that direction. And if I regret betting on them, then I can live with that.
I will zag here. I'm going to take the under because there is the injury possibility baked in. There's also, if Dallas Goedert has, he missed so much time last year, if he doesn't miss time, and like if they find somebody who can be a third option in the passing game, if Kellen Moore wants to do something a little bit different with the target distribution, there's a little bit of a path here. Just because they've been so high the past 2 years, I'm going to take the under.
Okay.
All right. Before we keep moving, if you want to play this game with your friends, just make up some homemade over-unders. Well, might as well suck them back while you're doing that, because a lot has changed over the years, but one thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. Another thing that hasn't changed is that it remains less filling. So what is the best thing about the original light beer? Well, Miller Lite sparked this debate all the way back in 1975, and we still haven't settled it. Guess what? Doesn't matter. Because either way, there's a good reason to drink Miller Lite, and you're not going to get a better light beer than the original light beer since 1975. Miller Lite keeps it simple, undebatable quality, great taste, and only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. You don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces. Fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer. And since we're doing these over-unders, unfortunately, you cannot bet on these at BetParks Sportsbook. But you can bet on other stuff like the big U.S. national game tonight against Uruguay. Is it even good for them if they win the game? Would it be better long term for them to lose and maybe force some changes? I don't know. Maybe you think that. Anyway, the BetParks Casino also is offering you all kinds of stuff. Check it out in person because the Parks Casino is perfect for after-work get-togethers, date nights, or girls' night out. Parks Casino, this is how you win. Enjoy $5 glasses of Albertoni Cabernet, $5 drafts of Forged Stout Victory Seasonal or Parks Pilsner, $5 Twisted Tea, frozen whiskey, Arnold Palmer's, all kinds of good stuff at the Parks Casino. You can check out Joe Conklin's Comedy Night with headliner Joe Bartnick on Thursday. Well, no, actually, that one's in the past. We don't have a time machine. We save that for tomorrow's episode. Visit parkscasino.com. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Parks Casino. This is how you win. They're going with a what's the movie?
Uncut Gems?
Yeah, Uncut Gems reference. I appreciate that. I'm such a sick man. Okay. I'm going to give you the Dallas Goedert one that I have since we were talking about Dallas Goedert. In 2023, Dallas Goedert dropped down his superpower of yards after catch. He was 6th among tight ends with 5.5 yak per reception, according to NFL's Next Gen Stats. 2022, he was 2nd among tight ends at 7.9, and 2021, he was 3rd at 7.0. So my question for you here is over under Dallas Goedert's rank among tight ends in the NFL in yak per reception, and it's 4.5. So will he be in the top 4?
So why would it go down? You know what I mean? In terms of like, why did it go down last year? I think maybe because of where he's being targeted. It seemed like a little bit more. Because again, it's hard to...
Is he less physical? Is it the stagnation of the offense? They're not creating the space for him to utilize as much.
I guess I'm going to go over just because he's done it in the past. I still think the talent is there.
No, hold on. Let's clarify. You're saying is better.
Yes.
You think he will be top 4?
I think he will be top 4 because I still believe in the talent there. And I'm guessing the offense will give him a better chance to succeed than it did maybe last year. I'm thinking that's possible. It's weird, again, because the results haven't been there. You look at it from the big picture and you're like, just how good is he? Is Dallas Goedert kind of overrated? Not a bad player, but just does the reputation precede him a bit? In this case, I'm still banking on the talent. I'm going to pull a Zach here. I'm going to go with the pedigree and the prestige and say that better, more favorable.
Yeah, this is tough because even last year when he was so down in this category, he was still only 6th. So he only needs to move up 2 spots. But then again, top 4, that's a heavy bet. I will take what is, I guess, the under in this. I will say he doesn't reach the top 4 for whatever reason. Maybe there's just more tight ends who are turning into yak guys.
I was going to say there's some good young tight ends coming up. Laporta in there. Some other ones that I can't think of at the moment.
Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
Trey McBride.
Kyle Pitts, maybe this is the year.
Maybe this is the year. All right, over to you.
I'm going to go with this is the one I considered cutting, but we'll include it in here. Paris Campbell targets at 46.5.
Oof.
I came up with that number.
Under.
There you go.
That's my best bet.
Fair. Again, I didn't feel great about this one. I might regret this. I came up with 46.5 because Quez Watkins averaged about 2.7 the past 2 years, targets per game. Extrapolated that over the course of a 17-game season. It is an easy bet to take the under from a standpoint of Paris Campbell mostly hasn't been good. Because I'm guaranteed
or healthy
to make the team, right? Yeah. But someone has to be the wide receiver 3.
Sure.
So I will inadvisably go over. I will say the one takeaway I had from training camp and or OTAs and minicamp, maybe I'm making too much of this. I thought you talk about this a lot. I've heard you talk about this a lot, the importance of this, like Jalen Hurts' trust in a receiver, his willingness to throw to a receiver.
Yeah.
And it's not like Campbell was a target monster, and obviously some of those practices, they were missing Devontae. But I saw some level of Jalen Hurts like trusting Paris Campbell that makes me think he will consider throwing to him as opposed to maybe like Albert O last year or whoever else. So I'm going to go over and then really regret this, I'm sure, later.
Okay, that's a good one. You want to know what my Paris Campbell one? We don't necessarily need to count that this one, but this is what it was all of those like DOA wide receiver screens in the offense last year, right? I have over, and this is how Paris Campbell was used with the Giants last year, over under 4.5 catches within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage for Paris Campbell.
How many?
4.5.
Yeah, under.
Okay, that's good. That would be good for the offense.
Yeah.
Whether he's on the team or not, that would be good for the offense. All right, should we... I'll give you one more offense, then you can give me one more offense, and then we'll transition to the defensive side of the ball. Would you like a Johnny Wilson? Would you like a Grant Calcaterra? Or would you like another A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith one?
Let's do a Johnny Wilson. I like Johnny Wilson. He kind of showed me something a little bit in spring practices.
I agree with that. Yeah. I would say that he was the one who intrigued me the most of the options beyond the top two. Johnny Wilson, over under 99.5 receiving yards. Pretty boilerplate here. Only 8 sixth-round picks over the past 3 seasons as rookies had more than 100 yards receiving as wide receivers, and only 3 topped 200 yards.
Yeah, I don't feel amazing about the bet. I know our good friend Shil Kapadi always talks about like the impact of day 3 receivers and how that's not great. But I think what Johnny Wilson can do in theory is offer big playability. So I'm going to lean into that. And we saw that in spring practices where I thought Isaiah Rodgers, who had a phenomenal spring, Johnny Wilson, one of the few people to make a play over him, and simply in part because he was just taller than him. I do think that's Johnny Wilson's game, is like being a downfield kind of threat. It's kind of like you don't think of him as a burner, a traditional burner, but because of his size and his athleticism, I think he has that ability. So I'm going to lean into maybe he just has a couple big catches sprinkled over the course of the season. And I'm also going to hedge against my Paris Campbell bet here and acknowledge there's room for him to potentially enter the offense.
My heart says over here. I mean, the history is overwhelmingly in favor of the under. So I guess I'm going to take the under and not feel super excited about it. But I believe a little bit in Johnny Wilson.
I think you made the smart bet. Yeah, I made the. I'm thinking with my heart more than my head.
That's
this
okay.
Case.
You're romantic.
That's what people say. I have one that involves one of the bigger, not a true camp battle in terms of its open competition, but one of the spots to watch, and that is the right guard spot for the Eagles. I want to go with more snaps played at right guard. Tyler Steen, the favorite, or the field.
Good line. And again, I got to be at right guard.
At right guard specifically, yes.
This is really good. And if this was at a sports book, I think it would be like minus 130 or something like that for Steen. But I'm going to take the field.
Ooh.
Because my spidey sense is up about the way that they have treated him since he's been here. We've talked about it a lot. Gave him a chance last year. Didn't earn the spot that they were hoping that he would get. Sua Opeta starts over him. Not like they love Sua Opeta. They let him walk in free agency. Then they are bringing in all these guys in the draft that they would have drafted over him. Sirianni forgets his name. And I think that the Mekhi Becton possibility is real. So I think Steen is the most likely answer at right guard. If I was betting on is he going to be the week 1 right guard, I would say yes. But there's also injury baked in here. And so I'm going to take the field.
I'm going to go with Steen.
I think that's the right bet.
I think they want him to succeed. And that doesn't mean I think they're definitely 100% believe in him, but I think they want to give him every chance to fail, as I guess is how I'll put it, before they insert Becton or whoever else in there. My thing with Steen, and I say this a lot on BGN Radio, and Jimmy and I are kind of lockstep on this, and I feel like it doesn't always get as much talk about elsewhere in the beat, is what if Tyler Steen's just a tackle? Because I thought he looked really good at tackle in camp last year.
He looked so much better at tackle, yes.
And also conceptually, and also why he would struggle. And I think it's not the end of the world that Opeta played over him last year. This is a guy who played defensive tackle in college, who then moved to offensive tackle, who then had to move to guard. It gets a lot of moving parts.
That's fair,
there.
yeah.
So I think it could take him more time. I'm not 100% convinced that he's an amazing guard and great player. all around. But I think there's talent there. I just don't know if they have the right fit for him. I don't know. And it might be a situation where like he might be better at tackle, but it's just not super viable because he's not the ideal frame there. So he kind of just gets caught in this no man's land. And I'm kind of worried that's the case. I don't believe that like he's just a bad player and they missed the evaluation entirely. I think it's more about the fit.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah. I don't think there's any reason to think that he's not a good player just yet. Their actions have told us a little bit more than what their words have said so far.
Sure.
Okay. All right. I'll go to the defensive side of the ball. A very down the middle one here. Nolan Smith, over under 3.5 sacks.
I'm a Nolan Smith guy. I really like, kudos to Zach, the biggest Nolan Smith guy, for accurately predicting, the Eagles would draft him in the first round.
Now he's really celebrating on his vacation. Another Mai Tai, please.
I really believe in Nolan Smith. And I think, he should have played more than he did last year. I don't care.
Yes.
Like, even if there was times he was struggling, and I think they tried to shoehorn him in a little bit in a way where, like, I wanted to see him rush the passer more than they did, especially, they cut Barnett. Like, the opportunity, they were hurting for someone to take snaps, and it's not a good signal that they didn't trust him to do that. But I think part of it is on this coaching staff, too, which has been reluctant at times to play young guys to a detriment, to a fault. And now I think they're in a spot where it's kind of sink or swim. They have to use him more than they did. I thought he flashed a little bit, enough for me to still believe.
His best game was probably the playoff game.
Yeah, I think there's some juice there. And I think it's weird because I think
probably the only person on the entire team who can say that.
Yeah, well, wait, in the playoff game?
His best game of the season was the playoff game.
Maybe Devontae, too, but yeah, up there.
Okay.
But sure, like one of two. I think there's some pass rush juice there, and I think, in theory, the liability with him is, he's smaller, can't defend the run. At the very least, I think he's really good at defending the run. Is the pass rush there? Is the size a concern? There's a lot of question marks, but as a Nolan Smith guy, I have to bank on the over.
Okay. Yeah, if you were talking to yourself when they drafted him, and you said in year 2, can he get 4 sacks and that would be seen as like something of a success? That would be pretty disappointing, right? A first round pass rusher, the expectations are extremely low.
Yeah, like let's say they didn't have the Jalen Carter pick. Like they just Nolan Smith was their pick at 30, and that was your perception of their first round that year.
Yeah, it would be a disaster. Yeah. I think I'm going to take the under. I'm not going to feel good about that. Like I think it's probably more likely that he hits the over here. But if Zach's guy Josh Sweat is taking all those snaps and Bryce Huff is playing a lot more, maybe Nolan Smith's role is less as a pure third down pass rusher and more of something that Vic Fangio can play with a little bit in space. Maybe that's what they lean into more. And I think maybe that is his value and less so just as a pure go get the quarterback kind of guy. So I'm going to take the under, but I don't feel great about it.
I have one that is along the lines of sacks. I'm going with higher sack total here. Milton Williams, your boy.
Yeah.
Not Zach's boy, right? Safe to
say.
He
hates
Zach,
him.
Yeah. He does. Yeah. Who does Zach hate more? Devontae Parker or Milton Williams?
Devontae Parker. I feel like that's Zach's entire vacation is paid by him betting against Devontae Parker the minute they signed him.
That's true. Milton Williams or Derek Brown.
Okay, well, let me look at this. Now, Milton Williams had half a sack.
Oh, sorry. I have the context for you. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Milton Williams had 6.5 sacks in his career over 3 years. He only had half of a sack last year. Derek Brown has 8 over 4 years. He only had 2 last year.
Oh.
So it's close.
Oh, you've baited me nicely here because I have to take Milton Williams. This is good. Certainly the odds would be in favor of Derek Brown, but yeah, give me Milton. He's in a contract year. Derek Brown just got paid.
I'm gonna go Milton too. I think you're thinking the right way. It's a big year for him, and I didn't know Derek Brown's sack totals were so low. When I looked up I was like, he's a Pro Bowler last year. I mean, sacks aren't everything, but he's 8 in 4 years.
Zach used the 5th overall pick on a Jordan Davis run stuffer.
I was originally between Davis and Derek Brown, but I had to do your side of the table.
I appreciate that. That's a good one.
Guy.
Here's my Jalen Carter one for you. One thing that we have talked about a lot this spring is what might be a tension between the way that the Eagles typically want to rotate their defensive line and the way that Vic Fangio has done it. with the defensive tackles that he has had in the past, right? Christian Wilkins last year played more snaps than any defensive tackle in the league. Mm-hmm. Last year, Jalen Carter played 48% of the snaps. And for context, Fletcher Cox led the group with 59% of the defensive snaps. I'm going to say 58% of the defensive snaps for Jalen Carter.
Oh, I'm going to make this my best bet. I'm going to go over.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
you're going to lean on him hard.
I think, yeah. I mean, that was like a big time. I mean, Jalen Carter himself said, like, not that he wasn't focusing on technique and getting better, but he was like, to the point of like, that was my number one thing was conditioning. And Vic Fangio coming out right and saying that basically in his press conference, and then what Jordan Davis had to say, like they've set the table very much for like, hey, you're gonna have to play like a lot of snaps, so you better be like in tip top shape. And also,
do you think that's a good thing?
I mean, I think there's a point of overusing him, but conceptually, like he's their best player, so he should be on the field. I think more than last year, sure, but I think. Not a good thing when it comes to the point where they were at last year when the pass rush died, I think in part because the guys were exhausted from the weird scheduling and whatnot, but also just because the rotation wasn't heavy enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think it might be a short-sighted thing. Now, Vic Fangio knows infinitely better than I do, but the Eagles for so long have leaned so heavily into this rotation. It's part of the reason I think that they have had successful pass rushes over the years, even when they haven't had like stars. And so it's very much on my radar as a potential concern, but I guess I will take the over here, but I'm a little bit skeptical, but I'm going to I'll join you on the over.
Okay. This one, I hope I paired it right because I was playing around with it. I was trying to make it so it's not too obvious, trying to make it 50-50. More defensive snaps played. So these are combos.
Oh,
the combo of Isaiah Rodgers and Cooper DeJean, or the combo of Keely Ringo and Quinyon Mitchell.
The latter.
Okay.
Quinyon Mitchell and Keely Ringo. I don't think it's easy because, in theory, those two guys are competing with each other, right? So I think it's most likely that one of those two is the starter. But I like Isaiah Rodgers. My understanding is he was the star of the Devontae Smith softball game this weekend.
Yeah. Big offseason for him.
Big offseason for him. But even if Cooper DeJean is the nickel week one, he's not on the field every snap. And I think it's much more likely that one of Ringo or Quinyon Mitchell is on the field every snap. So give me that duo.
Okay, you're making me feel like I did pick it. I did organize it well, hopefully, because of what you're saying there, the reasoning. I think, it is either Keely or Quinyon starting from those two. I'm going to lean into Isaiah Rodgers, though.
Interesting.
I don't want to make too much.
Are you the reason? Are you the man behind the Isaiah Rodgers hype?
I don't think I was originally.
Okay.
I was also kind of like, let me see it. The way he moved.
I think he looked. He had a fantastic spring. There's no doubt about that.
I'm not trying to be like too like football guy. Like I just saw him with my own eyes, and the way he moved. But honestly, the way he broke on the ball, it just looked different to me than the other cornerbacks.
The interception he had of Jalen Hurts on that was eye-opening. It was really, really nice. He read that perfectly well.
And I thought. Otherwise, was pretty active. Now, although he mostly had a good spring, he's only 5'10". That worked against him in the Johnny Wilson situation. That would work against a lot of players, but especially him, only being 5'10", as opposed to Keely, who's like 6'2", 6'1", Quinyon right around there as well. I'm going to go with Rodgers because I think he has a legitimate chance to start. I think the veteran might have the edge with Vic Fangio, and the way this coaching staff hasn't always like loved playing young guys, and the fact that Cooper DeJean could have a role as a nickel wherever, I feel like they're going to fit him in somewhere. So I will get some kind of snaps there. Maybe not. The ceiling isn't as high there, but I think there's an easier floor to reach with Cooper DeJean snaps. So I'm going to go with the combo of Rodgers and DeJean over Keely and Quinyon.
Yeah, I know that Vic Fangio might lean towards the veteran, but we're talking about a guy just investment-wise who was signed as a hope and a prayer versus a guy who they traded a third-round pick to draft and a guy who they drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
Long-term, I'm going to bet against that.
Okay.
Well, today's real estate market is ultra competitive, and prospective home buyers, perhaps just like you, are missing out on opportunities to win the perfect home. But why? Well, it's because you don't have Mortgage CS in your corner. It might be news to you, but the mortgage company you choose matters more than ever. Even if you are already in the market, you can still explore your options with Mortgage CS. This is home financing, not a marriage, people. You may be shocked at how much money you can save with Ben and Alec at Mortgage CS, who will ensure that you have a rock-solid pre-approval, and they will take the time to explore anything you want. What a novel idea. That's why Mortgage CS is the mortgage concierge service. In the end, you will be so happy you texted Ben, the CEO of Mortgage CS, at 267-391-7425. There's a reason people win more with Mortgage CS, so call or text Ben now at 267-391-7425 and see for yourself. You can also go to www.mortgagecs.com/PHLY to check them out or view their 370-plus perfect 5-star reviews by searching Mortgage CS right now. Tell them PHLY sent you. The advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company NMLS ID 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information. Now, also coming up on July 13th, it's a PHLY event, people. It is the first annual Liberty Open at Valley Brook Country Club in Blackwood, New Jersey. It's a scramble. You can sign up as a single, foursome, or sponsor a hole. All kinds of goodies. You get tournament gifts and tea prizes, taste of Philly dinner, and a post-round ceremony at the pavilion, contests and team prizes on the course, and early bird pricing. So check it out. And also the Phillies, we're going to be out. No, that's an old one too. Okay. The Liberty Open is the thing you need to worry about. Got to update our copy. Okay. My turn to give you one.
Yes.
Mr. BLG. Nakobe Dean. Games in which Nakobe Dean is active but is not among the top 2 linebackers in snaps played in the game.
Under.
1.5.
1.5. So you're saying...
Is there are you buying the idea that it's possible that Vic Fangio might start Zach Bond over Nakobe Dean?
I am, and I have to lean into my priors here. And through 2 training camps, I don't think there's been a single practice where I've been like, I see it with Nakobe Dean, which is like a long time. And maybe it's maybe this is the year he takes off. But coming off the 2 foot injuries, not even being guaranteed to start based on what we saw so far in spring practices, and I know maybe working his way back in there a little bit. I feel like I'm comfortable betting against him, and if he proves me wrong, great for him. But I can't put any faith in him. I know it's a low number, but I'm going to take the under on it.
Yeah, I made it 1.5. Oh no, you're taking the over then.
Oh, so
you're taking the over. Do you think there will be more games?
Yes, I'm
at least 2 games in which he's active, but not a starter.
I'm betting against Nakobe Dean. Yes.
I made it 1.5 because I think there's a chance of like a Kenny Gainwell week 1 thing from last year, where like, what are they doing? Where Vic Fangio lets Zach Bond play. I think it's more likely that he's displaced by like a trade acquisition or something like that, or maybe somebody who they sign later. I don't believe that they're really going to play Zach Bond or Oren Burks over Nakobe Dean if Nakobe Dean is healthy. Mm-hmm. Then again, if he gets hurt again, then maybe he comes back and he doesn't have a job. So I think you're making the smart bet, but I'm going to take the under just because I don't know that they have somebody they can really play over him. Although maybe it's Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
This is a deep cut. I like a Brandon Smith. He's kind of like
really
like deep, very deep cut. Don't even know if he'll make the roster, but had a good special teams tackle last year. Saw some things in practice. He was running with the 2s, I think, with Nakobe at points in spring practices. Okay. So he's also like
much different body type.
I was gonna say their biggest linebacker. Yeah. Like I think I just believe in the size a little bit. So you're biased. His name is Brandon too. Yeah. So
big Brandon. Yeah. I mean, all right, I'll go against you on that one. Although I would say I'm generally fading Nakobe Dean a little bit, but I think that's fine. Over to you.
I'm gonna go with, in the color scheme of the PHLY Eagles podcast, the Kelly Green. Eagles announced their Kelly Green games last week. We have at least 2. In theory, there could be 3.
Right.
Probably just 2. They announced the 2, which were week 9 against the Jaguars and week 17 against the Cowboys. They went 2-0 in their Kelly Green last year. Wins over the Dolphins and Bills. I'm going to set Eagles wins with Kelly Green jerseys this year at 1.5. Are you taking the over or under?
I mean, objectively, you should take the under because like, you pretend that every game is close to 50-50, so it's more likely they're going to go one-on-one. Cowboys should be good. I don't think they're going to lose that Jaguars game. I'm going to take the under just because that's what the math tells me to do.
I'm going to go over because
it's a superpower.
Kelly Green looks great. It looks great.
It does look great.
I think the players get excited. I think they like it. I think there's something to them having the juice for those games. I don't worry about them coming out flat in the Kelly Green game. And they're big games, and I can't hate on the team too much, or else everyone's going to get mad at me in the comments. So I'm going to say over on the 1.5.
Nick Sirianni.
Oh,
over under 0.5 apologies for his sideline behavior this season.
So yeah, how are we constituting this? Like publicly? Like he actually has to do it.
He has to in a press conference.
It can't be
no,
like
it's not like
a source.
He's not like reading like I'm so sorry, but he's like I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Like I overreacted.
It's not like Schefter reported he apologized. Like, it has to be a first-hand account.
Not. Yeah, but in a press conference, or even caught on mic or something like that.
Sure.
He walks back something that he's done on the sideline.
Well, okay. On mic opens it up to like he's apologizing en masse. It's not just like to one player, right? Maybe like because I think he might.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
fair.
I'm gonna take over because I think Lurie talked about that at the owners' meetings, and I think he can't fully. I don't want to say he can't control himself, but I think he does get emotional, worked up naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he can fully control himself in those situations.
And I think, again, that's natural. I think there will be a time where he's more cognizant of it, and he does apologize at some point.
I'm going to go over with you just because this one's hard to litigate, and so if we're on the same side, then there's less fuzziness.
I have a few more here.
Yeah, I'm bouncing around. I got all kinds of...
Eagles kick return touchdowns. They haven't had one since 2016. Do you know who did it?
2016.
Two can you name?
Ooh, yeah,
Is
two can you name?
okay.
Now, that's the year that I was not paying attention as much. 2016. Would it have been Darren Sproles?
It was another Chip Kelly favorite who
played, not Chris Polk. That was earlier.
Who played at the college he coached?
Oh, Kenyon Barner.
No.
Not
Bryce Huff.
Oh, Josh Huff. Okay.
Yeah. So half, like shoehorning the new kickoff rule in here. Do they have their first kickoff return touchdown since 2016?
I'm going to say under.
The safe bet. I'm going to go for fun. I'm going to root for it. Okay. That'll be a fun thing to root for.
Yeah. So, and then when it happens, you can tweet me. It'll be good.
Yeah. The smart bet is under. I literally have under written down here, but that's not fun to bet against. So I'm going to go over.
Okay. Howie Roseman on the fire here. The highest round of a draft pick included in a Howie Roseman trade from now until the trade deadline, coming or going, 4.5.
So over would be like 3 through 1?
Or a 4.
Okay, yeah, 4 through 1.
So will Howie Roseman, will he trade a third or fourth round pick at the deadline to get a guy?
He's dying to light a pick on fire at the deadline.
He is dying to.
Obviously, Howie's done a lot of good. But the deadline stuff, man, it's been rough. Other than what? Like the Jay Ajayi trade, really? And things that you really like or think that's a win. They traded a 4th for Jannard Avery. So, sorry, Jannard. But
and we know you're watching.
The bar is not very high to clear here. I'm gonna say yes, absolutely over.
I think technically this would be under because we're talking about the number, but yes, I agree with you.
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
I think trade a 1 through 4.
I agree with you. And I think that this is part of the actual roster planning that they have. At wide receiver, if a wide receiver gets hurt, one of those guys we talked about, then I think they're going to be ready to trade one of those picks. And they acquired one over the course of the draft, so they have a bit of a surplus here. I will agree with you. I think that Howie Roseman will be sending out a 4th round pick this year.
Yeah, I think those extra picks they got weren't just about we love the 2025 class. It's like this is good ammo for us to have for a team that's in their Super Bowl.
And
window.
there are a few important places where they are shallow, tight end as well. And so I think that this is a real thing.
And it's a buyer's market apparently. Like a lot of these veteran trades, right?
Although less so at the deadline.
True.
Usually it costs more at the deadline. But yes.
So this is from now until then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Another trade one for you.
Ooh, okay.
True or false? Hassan Reddick trade conditions are met for the pick elevation. So that is.
Ooh, what is it?
So what the Eagles get right now, no matter what, is the 2026 third round pick, unless Reddick plays 67.5% of the Jets' defensive snaps, plus has at least 10 sacks in 2024. Does he meet both of those conditions? Does that pick go to a second?
I say no. That even when it came out, that percentage is so high.
And that was also I think right around where I forget which of the Jets defensive ends was. It might have been John Franklin Myers, who was right around there. He was right just around there. So was Reddick coming in and being the top guy definitely this year and staying healthy? And I'm gonna go true because I think Reddick's a great player. I didn't love the trade. I got to say, I understand the reasoning.
How dare you? You don't understand. How dare you?
Apparently not. Yeah, that's definitely when too. You've made a move you're in love with when you're getting defensive about it.
Right, when you're completely triggered. Yeah.
I'm going to go over. It's also kind of a funny thing because it's usually, you trade a player away. You're you don't want that player to do well.
Right.
That stinks.
Right.
But it's you're actually going to be please, Reddick, do well, do good. So I'm going to say true. That does convey.
I do think it's an important part of fandom that there's always some trade condition to root for or against.
Yes.
Whether it's a team to do worse or something to hit, and it's always good. Just have something else to keep your mind occupied on Sundays.
The Eagles have been great with that in recent years. And
absolutely.
Saints and whatnot. Yeah.
How many more do you have?
I have 2 more.
All right, I'll give you 2 more as well. Let's see. I'm going to give you Cooper DeJean. We talked about him a little bit. Over under 33.3% of the defensive snaps.
That's a good number. That's a good.
Byard last year was at 30%, even though. No, not Byard. What's his face?
The nickel.
The nickel.
The new nickel.
Who only shows up on primetime.
The old nickel. Bradley Roby.
Bradley Roby. Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I think I have to go under. I think it's gonna be right. I think this is a great line. I think it's gonna be 34 or 32. It's gonna be right around there. I think he's gonna have a role. He's gonna play on defense. They seem to love. With Jeffrey Lurie, thrilled to be drafting him. I think he's gonna have a role, but I don't know quite how big it's gonna be because I still think they like Avonte Maddox a lot too. Not so much that Cooper DeJean can't unseat him, but not that's also just guaranteed. And also, there's just so many cornerbacks on this roster.
So many corners.
There's so many that what if they're trying to find a role for Mitchell and that kind of eats into playing time for DeJean? Or I'm going to go under on that.
Okay, I'm going to go over. He's Vic's guy. He's going to find out. He had a specific thing in mind for him, potentially. And I like Avonte too, but Avonte does get hurt. So I will take the over on Cooper DeJean.
My penultimate one here is Eagles undrafted rookie free agents on the week 1 roster. So not necessarily making the original 53, but it's game day.
Okay.
Week 1, this player doesn't necessarily have to play in the game, but they are on
the active roster, not an elevation from the practice squad.
I literally wrote here, not including practice squad elevation, that would not count. So, with Covey, whatever, in the past, that wouldn't count. But I will say the context here, and I have it at a half. So basically just one. The context here is the Eagles have had a UDFA on every week 1 roster dating back to 2013, except for the COVID year in 2020, which was, a very unique circumstance in a lot of ways. The Eagles, the only team, the only people negatively impacted by COVID, famously. But yeah, they've had at least one. In 2022, they also had 3. So it's usually just 1, a couple years where it was 2, but usually definitely at least 1 over or under.
It does seem like there are slightly fewer roster spots to be won at the moment. And, they spend so much time talking about how shallow this draft class was. It was not a great draft class, but I am going to take the over. I think they like to be able to tell that story as well. It helps with recruiting undrafted free agents in the future if you can have a guy. And I think part of the reason that they didn't have a guy in the COVID year is because there were no preseason games.
Yeah.
So there was no concern of the league got to see this guy on tape. You need to keep him to put him on the roster in order to keep him. This year, there are going to be preseason games. Somebody will pop somehow, and so I'll go ahead and take the over.
Call your shot. Who is it? Or who do you think has the best chance?
I think...
And if you need me to buy you time.
Just one sec. I'm going to say if I had to pick a guy right now, I think I probably would go Dankwa.
Ooh, you like a Dankwa.
I like a Dankwa. I mean, Gabe Hall is probably the betting favorite.
I like a Gabe Hall.
They are pretty light at defensive tackle depth wise. So
especially if there's an injury there,
that's a good bet. Yeah. And then I think Andre Sam has a shot.
I like an Andre Sam too. Especially, I mean, they only have 3 safeties you would say are locks right now, right?
Is it Andre Sam or is it Sam Andre?
I think it's Sam Andre.
Oh, that's right. Okay. What are you taking on this one?
I think I have to go under just because it's a smaller class.
The actual draft class is larger.
The draft class is larger. The UDFA class was small. When I did my latest 53-man roster projection coming out of the spring, I don't think I had one on there. Things can change in training camp. Injuries can happen. But I think it's going to take something like that. I think as it's currently constituted, I think Sam has the best chance. They only have 3 safeties. You feel like are definitely locks, but they could sign Simmons. They could sign Eddie Jackson. They could bring in someone there. Maybe not for week 1, maybe after week 1. But I think I have to lean under just because I don't know exactly who it would be. But I do agree. I think Gabe Hall is Andre Sam. We're kind of looking at that.
Okay. All right. My last one is not the most interesting, but it's a fun one to track, potentially. Bryce Huff, fourth quarter sacks. 3.
I mean, if this is Reddit, it could be easy. He's the closer. He's clutch. 3. Even?
3 even.
Wow, you're not going to do like 3.
I know. I guess I should have made it 2.5 because then it's at 10 sacks. You're dividing by 4. But I do think that maybe some sacks happen more in the fourth quarter because there's no running game to worry about oftentimes.
I'm going to go under. I think it's not that I'm down on Bryce Huff, but it's just kind of we haven't seen this player be a full-time player yet, so I don't know exactly what that looks like. I do think they're going to be good this year as a team, so that in theory the opportunity should be there to kind of tee off on other quarterbacks to get to over 3. But I guess, again, I was familiar with Reddick. I knew he could come up in those big moments. I don't know that about Bryce Huff yet. I haven't seen enough Jets games to know that for sure.
Yeah, well, they haven't been in enough close games.
I'm also sure I don't know those situations have existed, so I'm going to lean under here.
Okay, I'll take the over just for fun. Bet on Bryce Huff coming in and proving to be a good investment. Why not? I chose that in the end instead of combinations of head coach and coordinator over the course of the season, 1.5.
I guess I would go under there.
I think you have to, but it's a possibility. All right, what's your last one?
Worth bringing up. My last one is Eagles playoff wins, 1.5.
Buys don't count, obviously.
Yeah, win. You have to win a game.
Under.
Wow.
It's not fun, but overwhelmingly the odds would be in that favor. So I'm going to have to do that.
I'm also going under. I think they get 1. If you gave me half, I'd go over in half. I think they win a playoff game, but 2, tough. I think that's the thing. I believe a big picture here to make it about Sirianni for a second. I don't think it's like the Eagles are going to be a disaster this year. And you can clip this for when that happens and then throw it in my face, I guess, although I don't think you'll want to do that. I think it's more about the ceiling. What is the ceiling with Nick Sirianni? My big issue with him is I wonder, Sheil always likes to phrase it, how does a coach give the team an edge?
Never heard of that person, but go ahead.
They've obviously won a lot under Sirianni. Yeah. And I don't think it's that he's terrible, but I don't think, and I'm scarred by the Super Bowl, and I know ultimately, and Zach's not here, so I can say this, it's obviously Jonathan Gannon's fault, but the not going for it on the fourth down, and not only not going for it in that situation and having like the game awareness of you just allowed 2 75 or whatever 70-yard scoring drives, and you're putting the game in the hands of your, sorry to relitigate this, your punter who was injured and your defensive coordinator who was struggling over your MVP quarterback who's like looking awesome. I just don't love that conceptually. And also his defense of that, I think when you maybe asked about it afterwards, was like 32 out of 32 coaches would have done that.
Right.
And that really lost me at that moment because I was just like, 32 of 32 coaches don't win the Super Bowl every year.
Like, and they haven't been doing this all year long. And yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I feel good about the team's floor, I guess. I feel good about the Eagles' floor. Their ceiling, I just think, I don't know if Sirianni can give them the edge to get over the top.
It's interesting. I actually feel the opposite. Not from a Sirianni standpoint, but from I think this team has a huge variance. Like, I think the floor is pretty low just because we've talked about like the Frankensteining of the coaching staff. Like, there's a chance that none of this stuff works at all.
It does have a
just turns into a disaster.
feel.
I mean, they were probably the worst team in football over the last month of the season, right? That's a pretty low floor, right? And I think the ceiling is pretty high because if all of their stars stay healthy, they should be among the most talented, starting 22s in the NFL. And if Jalen Hurts can play like he played in that Super Bowl, then they could win the Super Bowl.
Sure.
But I think there is a real chance of like things bottoming out potentially if things don't start well and then you get to a situation like the end of last year and everybody's just sort of out on the coach. I think that's possible.
Definitely, there's, like I said, it reminds me a little bit of 2020 and the too many cooks kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like there's an element, it's not the exact same, but there's an element of that worries me and the feel. And a little just like maybe too good to be true of like, well, we got Vic Fangio, so that fixes it. And we got Kellen Moore, so that fixes it. It's definitely fixed. That was the only issue. I think, when we talked about the 2023 Eagles and what went wrong, I think, Sean Desai and Brian Johnson get a little too much blame relative to, I think, why.
Well, certainly Desai, as far as I'm concerned.
Especially Desai, I would say, actually. But, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This is a really football-heavy episode.
I know, disappointingly
sorry,
for
listeners.
July 1st. I know. Is there some non-Eagles take you'd like to get off your chest?
Oh, a bunch. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I did see someone. I'm pulling a Zach here and reading the comments, and maybe much to your dismay.
I don't even know that Zach does this during the show, so you're one-upping him.
Someone asked me to name my top 5 food cities.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know if I have a top 5, but I love Chicago. If I didn't live in Philadelphia, I think I would live in Chicago. Great city. The winters, that seems untenable.
Yeah.
But legitimately great food city. Don't have a soft spot for their sports or anything really, but just I think it's a beautiful city, and so I'm pro Chicago here.
All right, this question was asked to me. We live close to each other, see around the neighborhood every now and then. Someone's coming to Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I want you to set them up for dinner Friday night.
Okay.
Breakfast Saturday morning.
I love this.
Dinner Saturday night, and then lunch Sunday before they get out of town. So 4 meals, 2 dinners, a breakfast, and a lunch.
I'm a little biased here, and obviously not everyone has access to this. If you happen to know someone who can get into Belize Social Club, it's a great spot to go to. It's not for everyone's access, so if you didn't have that somehow, I would say Saloon is strong.
Okay.
A good alternative. That's for Friday dinner, Saturday breakfast.
Yeah. One of the weekends is a breakfast, one is a lunch.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's do one breakfast. I'll do a Sam's Morning Glory.
Okay.
I think their biscuit phenomenal, and also like it's I feel usually easier to get in there as opposed to some other places are like mobbed. I feel like typically you can get in there even if there is a wait. It's been reasonable for me. It's a good hot spot. You're by the Italian market too. It's just a good area I think in general to be in. You have to do Angelo's at some point. I mean,
that's the Sunday getaway. Yeah,
and Pizza John are my 1A, 1B in some order. Probably that order in some order in terms of like favorite Philly pizza.
Okay.
Elite cheesesteak is obviously great at Angelo's. I'm a Woodrow's guy. That's my cheesesteak. I would say you have to go to Woodrow's on South Street. And then what was the last?
Yeah, one more dinner.
Another dinner. So I did Italian, so I don't want to double up on that.
You could do a second lunch if you'd rather do that.
This is tough. It's tough because then now I'm narrowing it down. Do you have anywhere you've been recently that you like that you can buy me time to think of?
That's a good question.
Because I have a list.
I will say I haven't been recently, but I would like to go later this summer because last summer the summer menu at River Twice is like the best meal that I've had in at least a year, probably more. So that would be my go-to, but I don't know what the best one I've had recently.
And I kind of am, like Zahav and like that's all kind of
sure.
Just
You want to give
me.
It a little, yeah.
And also harder to get into potentially. I'm gonna go Royal Sushi. I think Royal Sushi is fantastic. I love a restaurant that has a menu with the pictures. It's huge for me. I need to see it. I have to see what I'm getting. Royal Sushi. Every time I go there, I feel like I don't go there enough. It's fantastic. Haven't gotten into the exclusive omakase in the back yet, which I hear great things about, but don't even need to. I mean, if you can, great. But Royal Sushi is fantastic.
And you've kept them in the nice neighborhood here. You've done a good job.
I did.
All right. So if you do that tour, there's a chance you'll get to see BLG. Super chat from Jalen All Day, All Sicko Dio Mad Day, who says, Zach. So if Zach made it this far in the episode, that'll be a nice, pleasant surprise for him. All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. BLG, tell the listeners, if they are new to you, where they can read you, listen to you, watch you, smell you.
Got the logo on the hat right here, bleedinggreennation.com. Yeah, it's the close-up so you can see a little bit better. bleedinggreennation.com is where you can check me out. Also on Twitter, Instagram, at Brandon Gowton. On the podcast front, on our side, who knows what the future holds?
Fingers crossed.
Hope to have news for people. What is dead may never die and everything. So we'll see. Stay tuned, and we'll see.
Okay, sounds good. We will be back tomorrow at noon. Zach and I undertaking the Flit Squad draft, wherein we draft rosters based on the actual Eagles roster. We'll see who comes out on the other side, see how much Zach's willing to pound the table for Will Shipley. And then back on Wednesday at noon with Handsome Rich. And then on Friday, we're off Thursday for the 4th. Friday is Zach and Rich at noon. So noon the rest of the week. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening. Most of all, thanks to BLG for coming into the studio and spending his time with us. Check out the article on bleedinggreennation.com if you want to play along on these over-unders. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.